Hey friends, before we dive into this week's episode, just a heads up. Our podcast talks about suicide, sexual abuse, and other trauma, and some of what you hear may be triggering, so please listen with care. This is The Survivors, real stories, raw conversations, and the truth about what it means to keep going after the hardest things. We're so glad you're here. Let's keep surviving together.
So today is a very special day here on the pod. Miss Lisa is having a book launch today. It is dropping today.
It is.
One of the biggest pieces of work that you have done to date, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's it feels to me like an understatement, but yes, it was definitely the longest project I've ever worked on. It's been over 6 years to get to this point. I can't even believe
on this book.
On this book, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are, in my opinion, and of course in literary, you are quite an accomplished author. You've had how many books published now?
This is number 4.
Okay.
This is number 4. Mm-hmm.
And countless articles. I mean, I'm so incredibly grateful to have you as a co-host because you have such a wealth of knowledge.
Wow.
And
I appreciate that.
So you've had books you've written on parenting and, other topics. And this one is a big one for you because it talks about your story. So what inspired this book and why now?
Well, so the book is called Surviving, Finding Hope After Suicide Loss. And it's the 4th book I've written, but it's the 3rd book I've written with my publisher Familius Books out of California, who I just love and adore. They're like a family. And I can't imagine putting this book out into the world with anybody else but them. So the book has been, like I said, it's been in progress, a work in progress for the last 6 years. And what it really is a way for me to share my story, which if you've been listening to the pod for a while, you know that I've lost 3 people I love to suicide, and I've lost, my father was one of them. But I have a unique part of my story, which is what the book is built around, is that when I was 10 years old and I lost my dad the first time, it was to what I was told was a heart attack. That was the story my mother told me. That was not the truth. I learned 35 years later that my father had actually died by suicide, and that changed everything, changed my work, my life. You mentioned I wrote a bunch of parenting books before. I did. I was a columnist and a parenting author for probably a decade, writing books about, raising perfectly imperfect kids and work-life balance and all those things about parenting that we all deal with. And this just, learning about my dad's suicide just shut me down. It shut me down. I don't really talk about this often, but I'll talk about it now because it's relevant. I did not write for a period of time. It was probably a year or 2. I just completely stopped. And I had been a columnist, writing a column every year and was writing books. And I didn't find the work I was doing anymore to be totally authentic to where my head was at the time, if that makes sense.
Was this after you found out the truth about your dad's death?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that changed everything for me, learning that it was a suicide and really just completely re-grieving his death from the beginning all over again. I mean, I know any one of us who have experienced loss understands those feelings, what those initial feelings of grief and loss feel like. I went right back. My body remembered, my brain and heart remembered. I went right back to that first day, that first minute of hearing the news that my father had died. And now all of a sudden I was a survivor of suicide loss, and I was married and had my own kids, and everything felt incredibly surreal and completely out of balance. My whole life just seemed to be off kilter, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the first few years before I was telling my kids, before I was talking about it with anybody. I mean, I kept that old heart attack narrative going for a few years. You'd be shocked to know how many people in casual conversation when I talk about my parents ask me how my father died when I say that my dad passed away when I was young. And I would just revert right back to that heart attack story for a long time. And then finally I got to a point where I felt like, no, that's not the story. It's not the truth. And so I little by little started sharing, and the more I started sharing, the more it seemed to be helping people, because I had people coming to me, talking to me, saying, hearing you talk about something that's considered to be so taboo is really reassuring that I could talk about it too. And it gives me comfort. And I just little by little, I just started realizing that I had power within my own story to not just heal myself by sharing it, but also to help other people who might be on a different point in, on that loss journey. And so I just started working. I had the title before I had anything, ironically, which is not the title of the book, but it was the working title for a very long time. The book was actually going to be called The Forgiveness. Because,
tell me about that.
Yeah, I've never talked about that. I've never actually talked about that before anywhere, but I'm talking about it now because it's actually, it's interesting to me how the title changed when my belief system around suicide changed. So in the early years of kind of pulling together ideas for this book, I was still in a place of feeling like suicide was a very selfish act. That's just how I was hardwired. No one taught me. It was just how I perceived suicide. And then when I found out about my own father, I realized little by little that it's just an illness. Mental illness is just an illness like any other illness, like a cancer or heart disease. And it needs to be treated. And there's no forgiveness involved. You would never need to forgive somebody who died in a car crash or had cancer or had dropped dead of a heart attack. There's no forgiveness in that. Why am I forgiving my father for something that was beyond his control? He was just trying to stop the pain he was in. So the title changed back in the early days, in the first year or two, and it's been surviving ever since. And my story is a little unique because I've lost my dad twice, but the story itself is only one part of this book. It's a lot of different things. It's evolved into a lot of different things over the last 6 years. It's most definitely a memoir. It talks about losing him the first time and losing him the second time and what that grief and loss and stigma has been like. And then it's also a resource guide so that when people are reading it and they are kind of connecting with it and they do understand that there are platforms and support groups and organizations that can help you. I want people to have that right then and there. So I incorporated a big toolkit and resource section into the book. So it's like a field guide in a way that both tells a story and then helps you navigate the story where it intersects with your own story and your own experience. So, and it's been a process. It's so hard to believe that it's out in the world right now.
But what is the best part of this book for you?
No question, hands down. And I know you know the answer to this. My mother is woven throughout this entire book. And that was not always the plan. The plan was for me to write this memoir. And I think part of the reason why it took me so long, it's never taken me this long to write a book before. It's always been like a year, maybe 2 years at the most. And in this process, I really just felt like there was more I needed to be doing kind of outside of the book writing process. I needed to go back into therapy for myself, which I did. And I've been in therapy for 4 years. And it's the greatest gift I've ever given myself. And that changed me in ways that is reflected in the book. And then I got on crisis lifelines. I'm a crisis counselor with the Trevor Project. And that completely changed my perspective on what kind of help people actually need in all the different communities and spaces in the world, depending on who you are and what your unique needs are. And so that became part of the book. And I created a mental health platform called the HelpHUB. That's integrated into the book. And all these tools I learned how to use and help support people. And so that's all of this stuff became part of the book. What was never supposed to be part of the book was my mom in any capacity. And it almost didn't happen. But at the end of the whole writing process, when it actually went into the editorial phase, where technically speaking, you're supposed to be done with the book and you're just editing, I had an idea. Enough people were asking me in different ways, what my mother's opinions were of certain things, or why did your mother make that decision, or why did your mother keep it for so long, or was it hard for your mother to hold on to that secret alone? So many different questions that I felt were better answered by my mother. So I just had an idea one day and pitched it to my mother, and then pitched it to my publisher and said, I want to incorporate her voice. I want to ask her a question. For every chapter, I want to ask her a question, and I want her answers to be in the book. And my publisher was fully supportive of doing it. My mother was fully on board with doing it. And we spent a lot of time together kind of going through each chapter and what her take on those chapters were, and integrated it in the book. And then the even better part is that I'm actually narrating the audiobook, which is done. That's also out as well. And I felt like if my voice was the one telling the story, no one else's voice could be sharing my mother's parts. It had to be my mother's voice. So she's in both the printed version, she's also in the audiobook version. And that is by far the best part of this project for me. It's like a living tribute to all of us and our story and my dad, and having my mother so woven into it is just such a gift to me.
And keeping her alive as well. You know, your mom's 87 years old.
Yep.
And, you know, coming from somebody that does not have any recordings or from certain people, that is an amazing gift to give to yourself. And I am so glad that you did that.
Yeah, me too. And it was such a joy working on it together, doing that together, recording together. We just had so much fun, and she just crushed it. She really had never done anything like that before. And to know my mom, which I know you've gotten to know her, so it's not going to surprise you to hear that my mother will literally do anything that anyone suggests. She is all for it all the time, full steam ahead. Let me get in there. And she just dove right in head first, just grabbed the headset and the microphone, and was just so eloquent in the way that she said what she wanted to say. And as a result, obviously, she's been on our podcast, and she's done other podcast interviews with me as well on other platforms. And she's become a real advocate as a result of us working on this book together. And I think at the age of 87 years old, to all of a sudden be able to call yourself a mental health advocate is a pretty remarkable thing. So I'm grateful for that. I wanted to make sure I answered the question that you asked about why now. You did ask me that, right? I didn't just dream it. So, you know, I've had this real sense of urgency to write this book for a long time, especially since the pandemic and during that period when things were so unstable and people's lives were so completely upside down. People's mental health was so bad, and it was just so volatile. It was such a hard time. And then obviously since that time, we've come out of the pandemic, thankfully, but we've also had some other really tough times. We've had a lot of political change and challenges insofar as how divided we all are, and the stress that's created with people, and people's mental health is not good. Suicide rates are up across the board. Job losses are up. All these factors, loneliness, we're in a loneliness epidemic. They all contribute to people's poor mental health. And this book, while it obviously focuses really, really heavily on being a suicide loss survivor, there is so much in this book about generalized mental health and about generalized grief and loss and depression awareness and just tools for your mental health. And I just felt like we need something. Everything that we have in terms of resources for our mental health is valuable right now. Anything that shows us the way or gives us support or validates what we're going through, or something where we can see ourselves in someone else's story or experience. We can't have enough of that right now, I feel like. And so I felt like it needed to come out now because people need all the help they can get right now.
Hey, it's Lisa Sugarman, co-host of The Survivors and founder of the HelpHUB. If you're listening right now and you're not okay, if you're feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or like you're carrying more than you can handle, please know you don't have to go through it alone. You can call or text 988 or chat online at 988lifeline.org to connect with trained counselors like me who are there to listen and support you in the moment. Reaching out is a brave first step, and you owe it to yourself. Because your life matters, your story matters, and help is always just 3 numbers away.
Absolutely. And I, for one, pre-ordered it as soon as it came available on Amazon. And so I, as someone who has struggled with my mental health for decades, and obviously having lost 5 brothers to suicide, I feel like this book is going to have a tremendous impact on me as well. So I cannot wait to read it personally for me.
I hope so. I can't wait to hear what you and everybody else think. It was definitely a journey writing this book. And it's so interesting now talking about it in hindsight with like the physical book is actually here in the world right now, that the act of writing it almost feels like a fever dream at this point. You know what I mean? But it was not easy, but it was incredibly cathartic for me. There were moments where I had to sit down, and so many moments where I had to sit down and be back in my childhood home in the family room, looking at the silhouette of my dad in the bed downstairs, not knowing he was gone, feet away from waking him up, and only to have my mom say, don't disturb him. He was up late. Don't wake him up. I had to go back to those places, to the funeral, to, all of what came after and all that pain. And it's, there were moments that I had to revisit that I hadn't revisited in decades. And when you go that far back, it's painful and you're grieving all over again. And it was a really, really, really hard experience in so many ways, but it was also unbelievably cathartic in so many ways too, to really just kind of be back in that space in a way with such incredible love and appreciation for my dad. I mean, I've never been angry at my father. The only thing that was hard for me in all of it was knowing that my mother had to keep the secret of his suicide to herself, and that she didn't get to fully grieve it the way that she should have, and I didn't the way I needed to either, but we do that now. And we've done that through this process, and that to me has been just such an incredible gift. We continue to do it every day. And
well, that was actually my next question for you is how healing has this been for you and your mother to do this book together, essentially?
Well, I don't know of any other way that we would have arrived at the place that we're at now, which is a place where I feel like we both have such a healthy perspective on suicide, and we're not angry about it. We're not bitter about it. We both understand that it's a symptom of a bigger problem. It's a consequence of a bigger problem. And I, for one, am just like, I'm so grateful that she and I can talk openly about it. I mean, that was the hardest thing for me. That was genuinely the hardest thing for me when I found out was thinking about her being silent and navigating all of those feelings by herself for 35 years. It was just such an overwhelming realization to me. And now we get to talk about all these hard feelings, and we have a lot of hard conversations, a lot of painful and emotional conversations, even after all these years. I mean, the truth has come out now. It's been 13 years since the truth has come out. And we have had, I say it all the time, we have been in one long 13-year conversation, I feel like. And I don't believe that conversation will ever end while we're both still here. And we've really I've been able to understand my dad so much better. I mean, we don't know what the catalyst was. The ultimate catalyst was for my dad to take his life. The note that he left was very brief. I talked about it in the last couple of episodes with my mom. It really just said, I can't go on and I'm sorry and I love you both. But my mom and I know that most of what my father's stress resulted from was his family. His family, they were thankless. They were very money oriented and wouldn't let him live his life the way he wanted to, and he felt very trapped. And so we've been able to explore a lot of that, and I've been able to understand my father a lot more and really know him in a way that I don't think I ever knew him when he was here. So to have that kind of relationship and open line of communication with my mom has just, it made writing the book so much easier. It made our relationship kind of level up to a new place that I don't think either one of us could ever have expected. We have just such an incredible, we've always had such an incredible bond. And anybody who knows us knows that we have and that we do. But this experience and sharing this experience together is something very unusual. It's really very unusual. She's so, oh my God, she's so excited for the book signing this weekend. We're having a big launch event here in Boston, and she is here, and she'll be signing books right alongside me, which she's so excited about, and having conversations with people, and just having her there as kind of a through line through the whole thing has been the most meaningful part for me.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
I have to say, it's very refreshing to see the closeness that you have, not only with your mother, but with your daughters. And, I think that's something that we should all strive for, coming from what I consider to be a very toxic and broken home. That is definitely something that I strive for with my own children. And, thank you for being such a wonderful inspiration to those of us, and to just leading this charge of creating a safe space for those of us that struggle with our mental health and have lost so much. I mean, I don't think you realize how much you've done and will continue to do for the mental health space with all your work you're doing.
I appreciate that. I really do. Look, you're out there doing the same thing. All of us who are out here in this space, having the conversations, being vulnerable, maybe contributing either platforms or material or podcasts or whatever it is that we all do. It's a community that has rallied around something unlike any other community I have ever seen. Being a part of this mental health space and seeing how many of us there are out there having the conversations, creating the safe spaces, being a support system. I can't imagine doing anything else with my life. And I searched for a long time. I've always been a seeker in that way. I've always been a writer. I've always known that that's what I wanted to do with my life. And I've written in lots of different spaces. But ending up here in this space as a result of my story and my own lived experience has made me realize that this is it for me. This is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. If any of the work that we all do and the conversations that we all have can just make it easier for one person. And I know that's become super cliche to say. Everybody says it, but it's the truth. Like, that's the end game for me, is maybe it's a mother listening to our podcast who doesn't know whether or not they should tell their child that their father or their parent died by suicide. Maybe it's someone who's having suicidal ideation, not knowing if they should confess that to someone close to them or call a lifeline. If what we're all doing can impact even a small number of people who didn't have support before, then that's, think of how many of us there are doing all of this kind of work. And that ripple effect doesn't just come from me. It comes from everybody. And I'm just grateful to do what I can do to support it.
Yeah. I appreciate you more. I mean, I just want you to know that there's going to be so many people that you have changed their life for the better, and you will never know the number. I want you to think about that.
I do. I appreciate you saying that. I really do. I mean, for those who don't know, I think I mentioned it in this conversation a few minutes ago, but that I also work on crisis lifelines with the Trevor Project. I'm also a certified 988 crisis counselor. I'm on the board at Samaritans here in Boston, and I am also one of their suicide loss grief group facilitators. So I work in lots of different spaces with lots of different people who are navigating different kinds of grief, especially suicide grief. And you never know when the person leaves the group or when the crisis call is over. You never know what really happens after that in most cases, in almost all cases. So you never really understand who you're helping. You don't know who you're helping. And when I write something, I don't know who's reading it. When I record something, I don't know who's listening to it. And you can just hope that it's finding its way to the people who need it. And that's why I do it. I kind of do it with the promise of that. And I know you do it for the same reason. I mean, everything that you've come on this podcast to share. I mean, for people who don't remember back to the beginning of season 3, when you and I started together, I mean, this podcast has been around now for over a year, and this is our 4th season. But you and I have only been doing this for 2 seasons now. And what people may or may not know is that you came in having had 0 podcasting experience. I think you were on, one podcast, maybe, as a guest?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is ironically the person who put you and I together, who said to you, oh, there's this woman with a podcast you need to meet, and said to me, oh, there's this survivor you need to meet. But you're out there too. You just hopped behind the mic when I came to you and said, hey, I think we can do something really special together. And you were just full steam ahead. Let's go do it. So I find that most people I meet in this space have that attitude, like, okay, what can we do? How much more can we do? What can we do now to change the game for people's mental health? So I'm just absolutely overjoyed that this book is finally out there in the world. And I hope it, look, I would love it, not for anything like book sales and things like that. I've never been a bottom line oriented person like that. Dave hates it because I would give away the store to everybody. But so for me, it's not about selling books. It's about getting the resources and the message into the people's hands who need it the most. And I hope it finds its way to those people. Looking for mental health resources that actually fit who you are and where you come from? Then you need to check out the HelpHUB. It's not another generic wellness site. It's a free, inclusive online platform built for real people living real lives. People managing stress, anxiety, depression, trauma and abuse, grief or suicide loss. At the HelpHUB, you'll find the resources, tools, treatment options, and trauma-informed content you need in the moment without having to dig through endless tabs or start from scratch. It's your place to land, to take a breath, and to find exactly what you need when you need it most. Visit thehelphub.co, where the help you need is just a click away.
I agree. That's all we can hope for. Being in this realm, if we had even a fraction of the traction that all the silly things out there get, I think we could make a bigger difference. If I take that as my mission, or we together take that as our mission, is we get as much information regarding this realm, mental health and all that out there to as many people as we possibly can, and partnering with different people. I mean, you can't have enough awareness out there. There's so many things out there that I feel like don't really serve a purpose, but this is one of the main things that the more traction and the more people that we can get this information out there to, the more people it's going to positively affect. And this is absolutely not a vanity thing. This is about saving lives.
Oh, that's 100%. I mean, this book is about, to me, about what happens after the worst thing happens, and how to move forward, and how to find hope, and how to live with that. It's about how to carry something that is never, ever, ever going to go away, and still find a way to live at the same time that you're always going to be navigating grief.
Yeah.
So I was hard on myself for a really long time, and I've never really talked about this before, but I was really hard on myself for a very long time for not writing this book faster. And I had these internal signals that kept saying, no, you need to be on lifelines for a little while. No, you need to be in therapy again to really just dig through so much of this and understand your own grief better. And there were things that I felt like I needed to do first. And then once I kind of, I don't want to say check those things off, but I did check those things off to a point. Then it was like I dove in and never looked back and just swam right through it. And I'm grateful for that because I think it's a better book because it took longer, even though I was really hard on myself because it took longer. Now it's got so many pieces and parts in it that it would never have had if I had written it 6 years ago. And, this, like I said earlier, it's part memoir, it's part resource guide, it's part toolkit. It walks readers through my own lived experience of losing my dad and losing other family members and friends, but it's also, you can almost read any chapter in this book as a standalone chapter, regardless of, what your experience is. I mean, aside from the first couple of chapters, which really kind of set the stage, everything explores something very different about the grief experience. Some chapters talk about shame and then guilt and then identity and I'm grateful that it ended up taking the shape that it took because I think it definitely has the potential to be an important resource for people.
Okay. I agree. So if you could, as we close up this episode, what's one message or, your message to people out there that may be listening and are, maybe considering buying your book or not considering? What's just a message you'd like for people to know as we close this episode?
Well, I certainly would hope that if anyone has experienced suicide loss or knows someone who has, that they would consider getting the book into their hands or a friend's hands, because the more we can see ourselves in other people's experiences and see how other people have navigated and survived these kinds of experiences, the better off we're going to be as we try to manage our own grief and loss. So I do hope that people can find their way to the book. I think overall as a message, I would just say that the way that you're feeling right now, especially if you're listening to this conversation and you're someone who is actively grieving someone that you've just lost and you don't know what to do, and these feelings are so hard and so overwhelming and so never ending, the way that you feel right now is not going to be the way you always feel. It changes. You're never going to stop grieving. I'm not going to say you are going to, because you won't ever stop grieving, but you'll be able to navigate it better. You'll be able to, like you and I have talked so much about, you'll be able to kind of walk with that grief side by side, and you'll be able to find hope, and you'll be able to keep moving on and living your life with a different relationship with the person that you've lost. But it takes time. It takes time, and this book is only one resource. There are so many resources and platforms and tools that are out there to help. And I'm just excited to add something to the bigger global toolbox.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for all you do and continuing to show up. And I'm just so very grateful for you walking this journey with you. And I hope everybody out there just knows how amazing you are and how incredibly special you are. And this world is definitely a much better place with you in it.
Well, I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And I love you and could say the very same things about you. I am going to give a shameless plug before this episode is fully over and say that we are doing a very big launch event in my hometown, which is just a little bit north of Boston. It's going to be this Saturday, May 2nd, from 2 to 3 o'clock at Shubie's Marketplace in my good old hometown of Marblehead, Massachusetts, right by the water. My mother is going to be the special VIP. Nobody's coming to see me. They're only coming because they want my mom to hug them and sign their books. It's not about me. It's all about her. So if you're in the area and you can come by and you can be part of the conversation and grab a book and just be an ally in this movement, that would be amazing. We'd love to pack the place and get the book out there in as many hands as we can. So if you're around, we'd love to see you.
Sounds good. I wish I could be there.
I know. Virginia is just a wee bit far for you to hop in the car, but I know you want to be there, and I love and appreciate that. I really, really do. But you'll be there in spirit. I promise.
Yes, I will. Absolutely.
So if you're around and in person and you can come on down, get some books, grab some hugs. All the info for the book signing will be in the show notes for sure. And you can find it on all of our socials. But in the meantime, whether we see you or not, just please keep surviving, okay? We will if you will.
Have a good one.
Thanks so much for listening and for being part of the survivors community. No matter where you are in your story, you're not alone, and you're definitely not broken. Healing takes time, and it looks different for everyone. The fact that you're still here and still trying means you're already doing the hard work. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. That's how we keep these conversations going and remind each other that there's always hope.
And if you or someone you know is struggling, please remember, help is always out there. You can call or text 988 anytime to reach a trained crisis counselor like me. And for more mental health resources, tools, treatment options, and content to support your mental health, visit thehelphub.co. We're so grateful you're part of the Survivors family, and we'll be back next week with another honest conversation about life after the hardest things. Until then, take care of yourself and your people and keep surviving.